February 13th, 2020. If you all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This time we will entertain any public comments. Hearing none, we'll go to the meeting minute review.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as written.
I have a motion
Second.
and a second. Are there any comments on the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Thank you. This time there are no extension requests. Mr. Wisnowski, do you have any legislation and legal matter updates for us today?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Planning Commission members. I do not. Everything's happening in Annapolis right now, and you're caught up from all the local legislation that we've been putting through. So at this point, I have nothing further to add. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, sir. All right. Next up on the agenda is one of our projects near and dear to our hearts. Major Site Plan SP 20-01-0049-C, the Kent Island Library expansion. For the record, please introduce yourself and who you are and who you might be with.
Craig Williams, architect with Becker Morgan Group.
Tom Davis, DMS and Associate Civil Engineer.
Janet Salazar, Director of the Queen Anne's County Library.
And Steve Cahoon, Queen Anne's County Public Works, and I'll be presenting the project this morning. I have a few slides to go through. The Planning Commission has seen this project before as a concept plan, and then also for informational purposes. And what we're showing today is very consistent with what we represented last month. Everybody is familiar with the site location. It's north of Maryland 18. It's on the west side of Cox Creek, and is a 16-acre waterfront parcel, zoned suburban estate, and it's in the critical area with an LDA designation. And we were before the Planning Commission in November of last year and received concept plan approval and a shore buffer reduction. And then we were based on comments made by the Planning Commission at that time, we came before the Planning Commission showing you the revisions and how the plan was revised last month. And what we're representing today is consistent with what we represented last month. We're requesting major site plan approval for a 10,882 square foot addition to the existing building, which would end an additional 49 parking spaces. As you know, the site is mostly wooded. It does have a required shore buffer that's fully established. The existing building is adjacent to a cleared area where the addition is going to go. There's one site access that comes off of Maryland 18 right into the parking lot and the facility there. Just right to the right of that entrance, there's an existing stormwater management pond that has served the property since the library was built, and that'll continue and remain on site. There's also the Cross Island Trail connection it's a spur that goes to the Cross Island Trail, which provides people pedestrian access to the library. And you know, this suburban estate zoning is a group of institutional uses, which includes Bayside Elementary School, Kent Island Elementary School, the library, and park properties in that area. That's just a little closer up of the existing facility. The site plan, you had copies of the site plan in your packet. There's the addition is proposed to be right up abutted and connected to the existing building. The hope is that the addition would be able to be constructed while the library is fully functional and operational. Once the addition is completed, there would be a renovation to go back and renovate the existing library building. The front drive access, or access drive coming off of Maryland 18 would be realigned slightly so that it would bring you to the new front entrance of the library. There would be parking spaces along there and a new parking area, and the 49 new parking spaces would all be done in permeable pavement as part of the overall stormwater for the site. Since this is a 16-acre site, it's permitted to have quite a bit of floor area. They're permitted over 200,000 square feet of floor area. This is a 242 square foot facility once it gets completed. So it's a modest use for the property and the size of the property. Being in the critical area, there's also limits on impervious coverage. The zoning would allow 10 acres of impervious coverage, but because it's in the critical area, it's limited to 15%, which would be 2.4 acres. The existing lot coverage with the proposed lot coverage would total 13.6% of the property. Well, let me, excuse me for a second. Let me get my technical assistance.
That button didn't shake loose on that wall.
So the lot coverage will be at about 13.6% within the permitted range of the, what's permitted within the critical area. The stormwater management, as we represented during last month's meeting, we have four different components to stormwater management. We have a bioretention swale, so where the water runs off the addition and runs across the property, it'll be captured by a bioretention swale and treated before going to the existing stormwater pond. There's a submerged gravel wetland facility, which is a low area with pond and vegetation feature, which will capture and treat the runoff from the parking lot. And then from there, it has an overflow drain that would go to the existing stormwater management pond. We have the existing stormwater management pond that will remain in its location for quantity control and treatment. And then we have the permeable pavement, which will also provide treatment. And all 49 of the 49 of the new parking spaces will be done in permeable pavement, just like this facility here. You're familiar with the parking here. There's going to be a total of 119 parking spaces proposed. The code requires 97. We are doing a little bit more parking than is required because of the use of the property. It can be used as sometimes it's used for voting, and then there's also meeting space there. So we want to make sure we have enough parking for the facility. So we're proposing 119 parking spaces overall. This is the exhibit for the stormwater management. The bioswale, as I mentioned, is down at the bottom of the screen. That captures the runoff from the addition. This is the submerged gravel wetland, which captures the runoff from the parking lot. This is the existing stormwater pond for quantity and quality control, and then the parking spaces are shown as permeable pavers. That's what I just mentioned. Tree clearing and mitigation. Because we're in the critical area, we're limited to 20% of the woodlands on site can be cleared, which is 1.7 acres. Right now, the plan is showing 0.68 acres of clearing to be done. The 0.68 acres is 12.45% of the total woodlands on the site. And because it's LDA, we're required to mitigate those plantings at a one-to-one basis on a adjacent property or in the watershed. This is where we're proposing to plant the trees. What is known as the Tanner Farm across the Cox Creek from the library. They have a fully established 300-foot shore buffer that's been allowed to naturally regenerate over the years. There's where that blue area is shown on the plan, it's kind of a pocket there where we could expand the shore buffer and do additional plantings. This puts the forest mitigation in the same watershed, in the same area of the property, or within close proximity to the property. We also have on-site landscaping that's required by the code. With the additional parking spaces and to meet code requirements, there'll be 37 additional trees for landscaping, 115 shrubs. And then also the stormwater management requires additional plantings. And we're going to have 26 shrubs, 1,400 grasses, 111 perennials that'll be part of that stormwater management facilities. Within the packet, there's the landscaping plan showing where all the landscaping is going to go. Much of the trees will be around the parking area, around the parking lot, and then the stormwater facilities, would make up the grasses and the perennials. So this has been reviewed. It does meet the requirements for the code. The architecture of the building is consistent with what was represented last month. There had been some changes to add brick to the front of the building. The materials that we used, we had samples last month to show to the Planning Commission. There's been trying to tie some of the materials from the new building with the old building. Carrying over the soldier course of block, as well as making the windows and the mullions be consistent across the entire facility. Also adding the vegetative trellis on the frontage to add interest and to break up a bit of the wall space in this corner location. Very consistent with what was represented last month. And also realigning the access drive to direct people towards the new entrance. One of the concerns was, directing people towards that new entrance and that new facility. We want to represent that this is a new library. It is a new modern facility, and it is. We want to direct people towards that front entrance. So one portion of the plan is to realign that access drive to do that. So that's an overview of the plan. We're happy to answer any questions. We have everybody here. Hopefully we can answer any questions you may have. Yes.
Steve, I have a question. You didn't show any nighttime renderings, but in looking at those, is the lighting adequate? It looks awful dark.
We have our mechanical engineers or electrical engineers are actually engineering to meet the code required candlelight on all the walking surfaces for egress. So yeah, it'll absolutely meet the requirements for lighting. It'll be better than it is now, actually.
Yeah, the picture with the rendering with the kids on it doesn't look good at all. That's not it looks unsafe, let me put it that way.
Yeah, the graphical nature of those renderings to show lighting isn't actually accurate to what we're going to be placing. We're going to have a lot more lighting than what's shown in the renderings. I think a lot of this is to show some of the drama of how the interior lighting can be seen, but in reality, it'll be a well-lit site.
Thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Cahoon, or perhaps Mr. Davis better. If you don't mind, Steve, bringing up the landscape plan or the site plan, in the center of that plan, there's an existing concrete path. Let's see. Just about in the center of that graphic, Steve, right in the dead center of that is an existing concrete walkway between the parking aisles. Up an inch?
Up a little bit.
Right there.
Yeah.
What's the rationale for leaving that if we're, trying to reduce impervious cover, or is it just because it's there? And to further my question, it's not shown in the rendering, so I'm just looking for clarity on.
It was an existing feature that provided access from the several spaces there off the edge of the parking lot. I mean, we can consult with the Department of Public Works and staff to see if they feel that that's necessary.
Okay.
But it was just an existing feature that we weren't doing any work in that area, so we just left it there.
Understood. And I guess the other's a comment. It seems a little ironic that we're putting improper grammar on the front of a library with lowercase Queen Anne's County.
Oh, what was that?
On the facade of the building.
Not you.
Artistic latitude, I
thought I maybe
understand,
made
it's
a
not
typo.
It's a tweet. Grammar doesn't matter. huh?
right.
As Steve said, the
Capitalizes can't.
the plan presented to you, these are actually our construction drawings, are consistent with the concepts that we had presented back in November and last month. And in addition to that, we have designed the water system. We're running public water off the elementary school site to provide a fire sprinkler system. Right now, the building's not supported with a fire sprinkler system. As this expansion occurs, it'll have to be provided with that. And so all the utilities, landscaping, everything's being upgraded to comply with the code, so. So if you've got any questions, we'll be glad to answer them.
Any questions from the commission? No? Okay. At this time, we'll take any public comment.
Good morning. I'm Julie Ranelli, branch manager of the Kent Island Library. Thank you for your consideration today of a library design that meets the changing needs of the community. When the Kent Island branch of Queen Anne's County Library was built in 1989, libraries were used differently than they are today. The expectation was a quiet space where people would find a book and leave, or sit and read quietly. Now the library is an active community gathering space, as well as a place to connect laptops and other devices to Wi-Fi and printing services. The building was constructed without knowledge of changing future uses and the effects those would have on acoustics. Currently, customers seeking those traditional quiet spaces are within feet of an active children's room, 10 computer stations, which were not even thought of in the 1989 construction, and several group study tables. Dedicated areas for quiet study and children's programming, along with a classroom and a makerspace, would all be welcome additions in a modern library that is heavily used by the community. The Kent Island branch saw 159,000 visitors in fiscal year 19, over 30,000 more than the year before. Registration for adult events can fill up within minutes because staff limit class sizes and offer programs only once due to space limitations. Even though 900 adults attended library-sponsored events in the first months of fiscal year 20, we know more were turned away due to that lack of space. Similarly, 3,800 children and caregivers attended events in those same 6 months. We know additional offerings would be equally well attended, but each time the library schedules an event, the meeting room becomes unavailable to community groups. We appreciate all that the design team has done to create a building that meets the library's and community's needs while keeping an eye on our unique location. The design brings the outdoors into the library with natural lighting and allows the customers to enjoy our wooded view along Cox Creek. Thank you again for your time this morning.
Good morning, members of the Planning Commission. Thank you for the opportunity to address you. My name is Kathy Colleen. I live at 115 Northwest Creek Road Drive in Stevensville, and I'm the current president of the Board of Trustees of the Queen Anne's County Library. On behalf of my board, I come here to urge you to vote to approve this plan as described. The need for a larger, renovated Kent Island Branch Library has been recognized for many years. I've been on the board for about 5 years, and it's been a priority for all 5 of those years, and probably previous to my sitting on the committee. Our board has worked closely with library staff and administrators, with county employees and elected officials, with our friends of the library, who you'll hear from in a minute, and with many other library stakeholders for many years to make this project a reality. In addition to the hard work of obtaining the funds that have already been described to you, the county allocation and the very generous state grants we've worked hard to obtain, our board is working, we are in the process of developing what we hope will be a robust capital campaign that we have confidence will bring significant private funding to the project. However, we can't launch that capital campaign until we have the approvals that are coming from groups like yourself. So all the pieces are in place. We're poised and ready to go. It's been a long time and a lot of work by a lot of people. We're ready. And I'd urge you to, I think we're all ready to make the Kent Island Library the crown jewel of the Kent Island community. So once again, thank you for your time, and I urge you to approve this project.
You.
Good morning. My name is Kathy Smerick, and I live in Stevensville. I'm here today regarding the proposed plans for the library. I'm currently the president of the Friends of Queen Anne's County Library, which is a volunteer-based nonprofit group. And on behalf of the 421 members of the Friends of the Library, I want to thank the Planning Commission for their work on this project and encourage you all today to approve the major site plan being proposed. Like so many in the community, we're excited for the opportunities that will come with this expanded space. As you know, the Kent Island branch is a home library for students from 4 elementary schools, Kent Island, Bayside, Mattapique, and Graysonville. And it's wonderful to see those kids descend on the library after school, on weekends, and all throughout this summer. But there are more than 1,800 students in those 4 schools. And currently, the children's area of the Kent Island branch is only big enough to have 12 chairs. So it makes for some interesting times in there as people wrestle for space. The proposed plan will make a huge contribution to the community by right-sizing this children's area, giving kids and their parents the space they need to work and learn and read together. We're excited that the plans dedicate space for teens in the community as well. Every day, students from Stevensville Middle School walk across Main Street after their final bell and come to the library. The proposed plans will provide the space to allow staff of Kent Island Branch to offer more programs specifically targeting this critical audience. Programs that will provide more middle schoolers with valuable and needed after-school activities. And the Friends of the Library will look forward to funding these programs as they continue to grow. Because the expansion plan so well reflects the needs of the community, the Friends of the Library are committed to being actively involved in the library's capital campaign to support the expansion. Our members are generous and dedicated to providing the library with resources needed to grow and enhance what can be offered in the community. Their generosity has allowed the Friends to provide the library with more than $100,000 since 2015, and we're confident that their support for the capital campaign will be strong. The Friends will also include in the capital campaign our community sponsors, local businesses and organizations that support our mission and have been willing to commit their resources to this cause. Organizations including the Kent Island Elks, the Graysonville VFW, the Kent Island Lions, and the American Legion of Kent Island are already working with us to support programs at the library, and we look forward to enlisting their support for the capital campaign once the design plan has been approved. Again, thank you for all your work on this project, and we encourage you to approve this plan.
Morning. My name is Joselle Gatrell. I'm a recent nominee for the board, Friends of the Library, but I'm also a longtime user of libraries, and some of my fondest memories occurred in library systems. So I'd like to offer my support for the library. Reading, I believe, is at the core of how we learn and how we prepare ourselves for advancing education, how we prepare ourselves for entry into the workforce, and how we prepare ourselves for decisions that we make in life. For some, access to the library, the resources offered, the programs offered, are their only supplement to educational system as we know it. For some, the resources and the programs are their only opportunity to experience and to learn about issues of importance, to share with others in the community, or to escape from their life circumstances. Expansion of the library will allow programs provided to grow, will open up opportunities to introduce children to the world of books, and perhaps introduce their parents to resources that allow communication beyond their current, that's currently possible. Whether electronic or hard copy form, the library staff provide access to the understanding of one of the key resources that we have available today for information. The library will help meet the increased need, as been talked about already, and will provide greater opportunities for other kinds of services to the community. I would like to, in short words, just request your support for the proposal, and I look forward to seeing the final result. Thank you.
Good morning. Again, I'm Janet Salazar, the director for the library, and I appreciate your time and your attention to our design this morning and your consideration of it. I just wanted to reiterate that we have done a lot to get financing for this project beyond what the county is offering. We have a grant from FY18 for the design. We have a current grant of $1 million that has been matched by the county for construction to start this year. And our grant for $2.5 million is included in the governor's budget, so as soon as that budget's passed, we will have that grant as well, which the commissioners have also proposed to match. So the funding is there, and I'm really excited to know that all of those things are coming together. But I just wanted to leave you with a short story, and I won't be very long, but today's libraries are not the quiet warehouses of books of years past, as I'm sure you're much aware. We are vibrant community hubs where people gather for a variety of reasons and take advantage of a host of different resources. Recently, I was working out at the Kent Island branch, which I do frequently, so I can get a sense of all of the community here since I'm new to Queen Anne's. And when I work there, I have to sit at a table in the front because there's no room in the workroom for anyone other than 2 or 3 people. And there's probably about 14 people who work at that branch. So I'm sitting at this table, and a gentleman came up to me and said, "Can I join your table?" Because there was nowhere else for him to sit in the library that day because there was story time going on, and one session had ended, and all of those kids and their parents were in the children's room, and it was completely full. There was another session going on, so that meeting room was being used. All the computers were full with people who were using them to find jobs or do research or to take an online class. All of the tables were being used by either tutors or other adult people in the community who use them frequently for meetings. So there really was only the one space left at my table, and he asked to sit down, and he said, "Man, the library's a busy place." And I'm like, "Yes, it is. It is a very busy place." The feasibility study that we did for our expansion supports the need for the expanded library and all the design elements that were presented. Public meetings were held, and the community told us what they wanted. The design that was presented today reflects the many uses the community makes of our library: meeting rooms, maker spaces and classrooms, print resources, digital resources, and just a space to gather and connect with other people and the outside world. The population of this library has served has increased by 44% since it opened in 1989, but the branch has had no major renovations during that time. We have been making do with the space we have, rearranging, paring down, and trying to fit everything the community is asking us to do into a building that no longer has the space to truly serve the growing population. This new, larger, and more modern building marries the traditional with the new, and will serve the library as it's used today, and will have the flexibility and design to make changes as we need to for the future. So I thank you for your consideration of our design and hope you will approve our plans today. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment? Hearing none, public comment is now closed. This time I will entertain a motion for a major site plan at the library. Ms. Toller?
Move that the commission resolve that the planning commission regarding the request by Queen Anne's County Commissioners for major site plan approval for a 10,882-foot addition and expansion of parking to the existing Kent Island Library, as more particularly described in the Department of Planning and Zoning file SP number 2001 0049C, hereby finds the site plan is consistent with the 2010 Comprehensive Plan and the 2007 Chester-Stevensville Community Plan. Additionally, the proposed addition conforms to requirements of buffering, impervious surface, and facility square footage in the critical area and in the zone for which, its zone, and hereby grants and grants major site approval with the following conditions. 1, the buildings are constructed consistent with the architectural elevations provided for approval. 2, any outstanding comments stemming from agency reviews are addressed prior to final signatures. And 3, all required signatures must be obtained.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I'd like to make one suggestion to Mr. Cahoon, if I may, while we're on the record. There, with respect to the restoration mitigation for the Tanner property,
Yes.
I would urge the department to look into a Department of Natural Resources program called Tree Mendus, Maryland. There are restoration grade plantings that are grown specifically for sites and situations like this for local governments, so that there's a cost savings recognized where we don't have to buy landscape grade quality planting stock for a back corner such as that Tanner property. So I think there might be some cost savings recognized if you were to look into that. That program just opened up, and I assume you can plant that whenever. So those are available this
Absolutely
spring.
Yep, okay.
So I would urge you to get in there, before they get picked clean, if you will. I'm happy to
They'll go
supply-
quick, I'm sure.
I'm happy to supply a link if you need help with that.
Okay, we'll follow up on that, thank you.
Tree Mendus. It's a quirky little moniker. It's a department DNR program.
Is there any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Congratulations. Thank you for your hard work and modification.
Thank you very much.
There's a hyphen in there, Sharon, I think. Tree hyphen Mendus.
Next on the agenda is the comprehensive plan workshop with Ginny Smith of Smith Planning and Design.
Magic is about to happen.
Good morning, once again, Commissioners.
Mr. Wisnowski, before you get started.
Sure.
I need to clear my mind and my conscience. Last meeting, we were very specific in our direction to you as you and Amy showed us some comprehensive plan websites and data. We asked, and maybe we don't need to ask anymore, maybe it needs to be provided as direction. We'd prefer to ask and have you, take that as a lead and run with it. But we specifically asked for information from North County to be posted. Whether it be coming soon, we're coming to you at a date to be announced. As of last night, there's still not been any of that information. And I'm a little bit disappointed that that hasn't happened. Whether that information was conveyed to Ms. Smith and her team or not, I do not know. But this commission fully expects when we ask something, especially as important as that, for our constituents in the north, that they are heard and that we have some action. So now that I've got that off my plate and I feel better, I will say that the website does look very nice. And
Thank you for your comments, Chairman Reese. I appreciate it, and I apologize if we did not completely fulfill that request. Amy and I have been before this commission. We've also been before the county commissioners, and have been fairly consistent in our approach to this comprehensive master plan. And that approach is to start on the western edge of the county on Kent Island, and then move to the east and to the north. Where we failed is obviously what you had pointed out, Chairman Reese, is to place something on our website that says that we will be addressing the North County. We've had those conversations. We had it again yesterday with Ginny. And by the way, let me introduce Ginny Smith and Michelle King from the Smith Planning and Design, who are consultants. So we need to do a better job of relaying that information. And I think your message is loud and clear, and that we'll have Jenny and Michelle amend our website very quickly to put a note that that we will be addressing the North County, or coming to the North County. We're really trying to nail down a day and a venue is where we are with that right now. And those are the discussions we had yesterday. So again, I apologize for that. I'll take it to heart, and we'll make sure that it gets corrected.
So why don't we call that a learning experience?
Sure.
And the next time it'll be a mistake. Fair enough?
Fair enough?
Beautiful. Thank you.
Ginny?
Can I ask a question before we start? Typically, in the minutes for work sessions, is like for you guys to kind of decide, not very detailed in the minutes. And before I go and assume that's what you want, I just want to make sure that's what you want.
Every word recorded. I'm joking.
Or do you want it to reflect more like everything else that comes, the way I've done everything else, so.
I think it'd be fine.
I think it'll be okay. What's the,
Except when there's issue, like an issue that we just
If there's
went
anything
through.
you would like vote on or
We would
do,
like,
I would,
yeah, but the issue that we just had,
a consensus for something.
Yeah.
the issue we just had would be a major, that should be in the minutes.
Okay.
I would say something else preliminarily. I think the photograph is looking west. I think we're looking at Anne Arundel County.
We are.
we are?
I'm not clear why that would be appropriate.
Yeah,
Because it's prettier.
It's a pretty picture.
The sunrise. That's just a comment.
we had a collection of photographs that staff provided, and so we went through and we're like, oh, this with the color, and Miss Dobson was right. It was pretty, and it matched the color scheme. So I believe in your packet that John provided, you had the agenda. So we're just going to follow that, those topics and move throughout this PowerPoint and the presentation. And then yesterday when we had meeting with staff, I think John suggested that we didn't have this in there yesterday, but we just add a slide on the Planning Commission role in the comprehensive plan. This is taken directly from MD, Maryland Department of Planning. their
Excuse me, Jenny,
website.
speak closer to
Oh, okay.
your mic, if you will.
I know, I have such a loud voice. So this was taken directly from the Maryland Department of Planning website. It's one of the slides that's in their packets for planning commissions. And so we added this just to show the role of the Planning Commission in the comprehensive plan. So you can see the little bullet points there. We put in boxes, and we'll be working through the process with you as partners to get this comprehensive plan completed and to solicit the public input throughout the process.
And so I'm just going to give you a little quick overview of the website and tell you how many visitors and everything else that we've been doing and all of our efforts to do outreach. So as you all are familiar with, you saw our website. A few analytics just to give you. We opened the website up in the end of December, and so far we've already had over 558 visits, and 425 of those are unique. So it's not the same person, it's a unique person each time. So we've also kind of looked at it and 55 had directly gone, or 58%, sorry, have directly gone to our website using the URL. 24% have come over through Facebook. 13 have been referred, so basically off of the county's website, they've come through. 4% have gone through and searched through on the Google or whatever they prefer, and then Twitter and Instagram. Majority of them are coming through their desktops. We've had some mobile visits, and then, as you can see, a minimal amount of tablet. So we really are in our first step of gathering resources. And the first step was to reach out to the public, reach out to everybody, and try to get some information. And one of those was the public survey. We went to the Council of Governments and asked all the town members if they would not mind if they would put up a box. It's a ballot box, and we gave them the survey because not everybody has access to the internet. So we wanted to make sure hard copies are available throughout the county. So they were very willing, and we actually, I believe the next slide has the listing. So you can either go onto our site and access the public survey, or you can go to all the different locations, which is on our website. We list where those are, where you can access that as well. This is kind of even planning and zoning. They have one right out here at their office. This is a list of where every box is located. And we were really excited too. The town of Queen Anne is not listed on here because their town hall is new and it's not manned. But the mayor was gracious enough. He went through all the community and distributed and collected the surveys for us. So we're very appreciative of that.
So can you go back to that last slide, please?
Sure.
Ironically enough, there are no public survey boxes south of Queenstown. So the southern side of the island, you put all the public information boxes on the north side, but none on the south. So we're...
Look into that and see if we can find a location. See if there's a
How about the library?
library or, yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you for noting. So just some quick preliminary results so far from the public survey. Majority, everyone lived in Queen Anne's that has gone in and participated in the survey. Majority of the people who have participated are in the town of, or the community of Chester and Stevensville and Centerville. Most are between that age bracket of 55 and 64. And 76% we were really kind of excited to see that they were aware of the 2010 comprehensive plan. And they rated the quality of life here in the county as good, and traffic is definitely one of their pressing challenges.
I think.
That.
Yeah. So another thing with our website, as soon as you go to the website, you'll notice this page comes up and it says stay in the know. And that is a way for the community to get weekly updates. You can provide your contact list, your email, and so far we have 112 who have participated. And every Monday afternoon or Tuesday, we give them an update, where are we at, what's our upcoming events, try to just keep them engaged and where we are with the plan and what's happening. And if you go through our website, which I'm sure you have, it gives a brief little overview of our timeline and then project deliverables. We try to make sure that we keep the event section up to date with everything, and it's all events that have been confirmed, that we definitely have confirmed with the location and everybody that's involved. Quarter one, this between January and March, these are events that we have lined up, and we've already have conducted the visioning workshop for the Chester and Stevensville last week. We thought it went really well. And up next, then we have the Kent Narrows, as you can see, Graysonville, and the mid-North County that you have spoken of. We are trying to make sure we lock down, we're looking at the Churchill Volunteer Fire Department for April. We're just getting confirmation on the time and the date because it's under construction.
We're hopeful, and we've requested April 22nd, 5 to 6:30. I was just a little bit loath to post that before we had confirmed with Churchill. And we were trying to use, our hope is to use different types of venues. So as you can see, we had the we had a library, then we did a community center, and
Were you doing
so
the
we were
visitor
looking
center?
at different places where the community meets. So the suggestion was made the Church Hill, and they have this new facility, and it's supposed to be completed by mid-March. So we were trying to push it out a little bit, so they had a little wiggle room in their schedule. But because it is a volunteer fire department, it's not manned. So it's taken me several weeks to get back. So now I'm just confirming that. So I hope to be able to, in fact, I'm waiting on an email back from the lieutenant. So very hopeful that that works out. It will be a nice venue to use, and it should be a larger venue. So we're hopeful that we can have that up very shortly.
As soon as it's confirmed, we'll definitely put that on the website. We just didn't want to put anything that,
It was one of those type of things. So
yes, so as you can see, then we have the public, we're doing the commissioners meeting today. And then we're working on, we have the Kent Narrows Development Foundation meeting. It's open to the public as well on the 24th at 9. And then we're doing a sustainability and growth workshop on the 25th that's open to the public as well. Go.
And so with the Chester Stevensville Community Visioning Workshop, it was an opportunity at Q1, and I keep emphasizing in the beginnings of processes, are always hard. It's always hard to get started. And so when you asked, what we're really looking for is to gather information to help direct us on, because it is an update, we're looking for what areas we really need to concentrate on going forward. And so we're looking for that countywide and a community perspective. And since the community plan and update of the community plans are part of this scope of work, we were working across those 3 communities first. So we're getting both that community perspective at these first 3 workshops, and then we're also seeking a countywide perspective for the overall plan. And so at that workshop, the first one we had about 55 to 60. We had some people going in and out of the workshop, but attended that workshop. We did collect, we had a station set up for the survey for folks who hadn't seen or wanted to take the survey, and hard copies, so they could do it either way. We did have, now QATV did film it, to my regret, no, mortification. I don't love seeing that, but 2,100 people obviously did, because they viewed it on Facebook, and then we did have about 40 views on YouTube. And that data that we're collecting at this point is more qualitative data, and it's just giving us an understanding. So going forward, that data does help us, and so I put that at the bottom. It does give us insight into what people consider challenges here and opportunities, and directs our research. And so one of the first steps in that gathering, in addition to that outreach strategy, we did work with staff. So most of, if you look at Appendix 1, if you're familiar, that is where that plan implementation, where the recommendations of the previous plan were housed. And so our first step was to say, well, where are we? How did you do? What does this look like? And so we did have a technical committee meeting there in December. And we also sent out to all the staff that were listed and agencies that were responsible for those different recommendations, those different strategies. Is this complete? Is it in process? And we asked for information. Is this something you want to even go forward if it's not complete, if it's incomplete? And so what we found with that process is that we did have 13% complete in their entirety, 19% were incomplete, and then the majority were still in process. And then we did have 19% they asked that we remove, that we just get rid of. And so that was part of that gathering. Now we are then, subsequent to that, we have been scheduling meetings with those departments, those agencies, stakeholders that were identified as responsible for implementation in 2010. And so I think yesterday we met with housing, IT. Later this afternoon, we're meeting with Public Works. We're meeting with Economic Development and Tourism, and we're just going through and having individual meetings, and they're coinciding with with the topics of the plan that we're developing at that time. So while we're reading and looking at that topic, and we're working with housing right now, then we're meeting with staff. We plan to then have another technical committee meeting in May, June, and get people together to say, we do strategic planning too, so we're just finishing up with Talbot, and one of the things we always ask is, are there opportunities for collaboration? So while we're listing things separately, are there opportunities to collaborate and to say, how can we make the scope of this project more inclusive, or can we get the most out of, if the county's going forward with a project, that we can get the most out of that project? So we'll have them talk together, so individually, and then bring the group back together and look for those opportunities. And now with the community plan development, so we're in the process concurrently looking at developing these and updating these community plans. So a lot of the information that was in the Chester-Stevensville community plan was 2004, and then there were some updates for 2007. So they're dated plan documents. So again, we're looking just like with the county at the vision, challenges, and opportunities, and then we're really doing a refresh. And right now, we've been working to get the demographic and that community profile, the data that's kind of in the front of all three documents, updated and as updated as we can. Census is coming up, but there's a lot of estimates and things that we're using from the Maryland Department of Planning and other state agencies. They track this stuff a lot better than they did a decade ago. In terms of the county town planning, one of our first stops was with the Council of Governments. And we did do a questionnaire with them and said, okay, just get us started, give us some perspective. We are meeting with them again on May 13th, and one of the sections of the plan is that county town planning, section 5. So it'll be a good opportunity for us to go over and talk to them. We're also kind of pushing that back a little bit because we are waiting on, and I have a slide coming up on land use and existing land use. So the schedule is a little adjusted, tweaked, so that we can use the best available information. So it's the next slide. There we go. So the county is working with another consultant to get this land use, land cover data set. And we always say, good data in, good data out. So this will be a vast improvement to what was available for the last plan iteration. And so that is expected to be completed in mid to late March. Luckily enough, staff is engaging us in the process so that we can review that with them prior to the county accepting that data, because then we will use that data for future land use and those recommendations that go along with it. And we're really looking at it at a much more micro level. Before, it was very generalized. And so if you look at this next slide, you'll see now this came from Sam in GIS, and so he's giving you some background here on what they're using to develop this. And so while we'll have the land cover, if you look at the box in blue at the top, that's land cover, we're also going to have the land use classifications, and this is from what the Maryland Department of Planning recommends, so it will be in line. And so we'll have these 29 classifications, and so that will enable us to be much more specific. The QA Plan 2020, we keep saying it's an update, but at the same time, it's a refresh. We're also doing some reformatting. It'll have a different look, and we're trying to make the plan what our hope is that the plan is more digestible for the public, and that we're presenting it in such a way that depending on what people want to get out of the plan, the most important parts we're putting up front, and then background data in the back. So years ago, it was standard to do an element and a background study. And so we're using a little bit of an old school idea and bringing it forward so that we think that will really help users of the document navigate the document more easily. The other thing that we're looking at is making it online, a more digital, and a document that can be viewed easier in that online format. So that is my watch. I'm sorry. So the plan sections, this is, we're keeping that same flow, and we're updating these sections. And then for Q1, I just wanted to go over the quarter one. So we have things sectioned off because this was a year-long planning process. We had different topics and things sectioned off by quarter. So for quarter one of 2020, so we launched the website, as Michelle said, at the very end of December. And we will keep, if on our schedule, we have dates where we keep adding to the website and refreshing the website. And so from a quarter one perspective, that status update, working on the community profiles for both the county and then those 3 planning areas, the 4 visioning workshops, and then update to the community plans to extent we can do it prior to having that land use. Our topics of concentration were workforce housing and then this economic development and tourism, which coincides with some of the dates that we have up there for different outreach events. Coming up, the next steps for us would be we continue to update further those community plans, making those available, conduct our workshop, and the information that comes out of that workshop, going to the COG, and then those topics of concentration will be that existing land use, county and town planning, the sensitive areas and water resources, and priority preservation. So those are our next steps, our immediate next steps for the next quarter. Is that it?
I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Do you know what the biggest industry is in Queen Anne's County?
Industry, biggest industry, no, sir.
Agriculture? I haven't
She
seen
told
a
me
thing.
that yesterday, but I didn't want to. We just had a meeting
We're
yesterday.
completely left out of this pool, right?
So I have a couple questions as well. Oh.
May I ask a follow-up, Tom? Could you be more specific to what extent do you mean when you say you're completely left out of this
I didn't hear a
process?
mention of agriculture in this when we're in the meetings. I mean, so.
The website does show, has a few slides that talk about agriculture as part of the program.
Okay.
Can you bring that up,
Can I get mine?
Michelle? Because we went over that yesterday, actually. So she's going to go to the community website.
I'll share the blame with you. Agriculture doesn't speak for themselves. And we need to push for that.
We absolutely know that agriculture is the #1 industry, and we're not ignoring agriculture at all.
So I feel we are.
QAC comp plan.
Under pressure. Sorry.
I mean,
So there's the
agriculture just, I don't really feel has a voice. And I feel this is starting with this, and I know you gotta have a starting point,
Right.
but I think we all start together.
If you scroll, if you dig into this, what we have posted or what they have posted
This is under
online.
project deliverables, the community profile.
I'm actually adding to this as we do chapters. So this
only
this
evolving.
profile,
So that gives a snapshot of the agricultural production in the county. I guess my point is, Tom, we're not ignoring agriculture at all. Has it been prominent to date? Absolutely not. I mean, I understand. They're in the gathering phase of information.
Maybe an idea would be for these workshops, rather than being geographically distributed around the county, you also include some workshops for individual, but areas of interest, agriculture. I'm struggling with what else might be.
Tourism.
Tourism, right.
Environment.
Environment. Tom Lee can run the environment one.
One of the questions I have is, on the one that's up there right now, have internet access, 85%. Is that the people?
Farms.
What's it based on? It's not on
go
geographics.
to the source at the bottom.
Because we have
please.
huge areas of the county that do not have access.
It's percent
True.
of farms
Well, you
that
have
internet
access, it's not adequate access.
You have dial-up.
Yeah.
Which is
And that
like
was
not having
taken-
access today.
That was taken directly from the Census of Agriculture. And it is from that state data set. And they were looking, when they did a survey of farms in the area, that was a question that was asked. And so that is the statistic that was pulled from that information.
By somebody giving you that verbally?
Not us getting, no, ma'am, this is from the 2017 Census of Agriculture.
Interesting.
So,
My question to that would be, how many farmers actually took that survey? Probably most of them had access to it, but there's a lot of farmers that didn't, that are not
And that's who
included in that.
reported.
Or a lot of older farmers that don't prefer to use the technology that puts them there.
Mhm. And I will say, going forward, based on the topic of the plan section that we're working in, we then schedule and look at meetings that would help with gathering information and presenting information as we're working on that. So at this point, that's why you see that sustainability and growth workshop scheduled, because we're working on the section of the plan that deals with economic development and tourism. And so as we move forward, we're working through the process. And so we have things scheduled, but to say, and this is actually, it works out because when we get your feedback, we're not so set in stone that we can't add and adjust things as we go. But we particularly want to follow in the section of the plan and coincide with where we're working, because that's where it's fresh, that's where we're already steeped in that information, and then can address that in a timely way. So that's kind of how the proposal and how we said that we would work through the process. So that's why it kind of makes it nice that we can then add and be looking at the schedule. I'll show you. This is what our overall, and I've already written on it how many times. So every probably 2 weeks or about bi-weekly, we're adjusting and sending this over to planning and zoning and saying, okay, here's who we confirmed, this is what we're adding to the schedule based on where the project's taking us. And so I hate to start anything out with major preconceived notions as to what exactly in stone how the process should flow, because then we're not flexible and we're not adapting and hearing what you're telling us and what the community is telling us. So we are, particularly in this first quarter, really trying to be good listeners so that we can do what works for Queen Anne's County. And just because we've worked on other plans in other areas and other planning documents actually for your county, I think the first one I did was back in 2005 for Queen Anne's County. So we're trying to really listen and have the opportunity to schedule and go with a project as it works for your jurisdiction. So we are hearing you and listening and trying to be very good about how we do things. So I appreciate the feedback. That's exactly what we're looking for.
So I expressed a difference in agriculture, the last census and before.
Okay?
Most farmers just want to fly underneath the radar, leave me alone. If it doesn't bother me, I don't want to be involved into it. But agriculture's really changing today. To survive, you have to do some other things. So agriculture really needs to be involved in this plan of, as agritourism or other options, to ways to keep your family alive and stay on the farm. Things have to change. It's not going to be the traditional farm as we knew it. So we really need, and I have to work on farmers to get them to speak up too with this. But it's a changing world that, like I say, it's not like it was 20 years ago. Leave me alone doesn't work anymore. So, all right. Well, thank you.
Sheila, you want to go or you want me to go? Go, please.
I can
please.
wait.
No,
I'm
no.
not- Go ahead.
No.
Maybe you'll cover what I had in mind.
So, Mr. Wisnowski, first off, if you're getting these updates from Ms. Smith, can you share those calendar updates with the commission every 2 weeks or bi-weekly or whatever they are, so we can be informed as well? I have some questions as to your planning and thought processes, because I don't quite understand. If you knew Queen Anne County, as you said, you participated in some updates, you're doing Talbot County, and you seem to express you have interest in the Eastern Shore, but you don't realize that Queen Anne County is almost a bedroom community, yet you're setting all your meetings for 5 o'clock. 5 to 6:30. You have no respect for the parents that have children that want to attend these meetings, people that have to commute back to attend. I'm a little perplexed by those timeframes. Can you explain why you chose that time?
We actually, I think the first one we did do, one is 5 to 6:30, the next one's 6 to 8. And so, and Graysonville is actually 6 to 8. But nonetheless, I hear what you're saying. If you have a better suggestion, please do so, because we're still scheduling meetings, and we'll, later in the process, as we have sections developed, we'll be doing public forums and open houses. So I would love to hear what works for this community.
Can you pull up your website? I thought everything said 5:30 to, or 5 to 6:30.
Just the first one was 5. The county commissioners meet at 5:30. So we weren't pushing anything earlier than that. So
So,
it's
well,
in that
the one
early
in-
evening timeframe. Assuming county commissioner meetings are at 5:30, public attends those. This is somewhat consistent with that. But if you feel that it needs to be later, then
Well, to get constituent support, and people to attend the meetings, there's only one that's from 6 to 8. Everything else is either in the morning with the Kent Narrows Development Foundation and.
well, that's their established
Right,
time.
and
Right.
I understand that.
Yeah.
That's during their normal meeting. But can you scroll down a little bit, please? And that's a Saturday, March 25th? No, it's a Wednesday. So you have one.
That corresponds, if I'm not mistaken, with
Right.
the Economic Development Commission's meeting.
That's the, mm-hmm.
And that, we're having that in front of the Economic Development Commission and then any public that wishes to attend. But that's their designated meeting time.
We actually stratified the time. If you looked at Chester Stevensville was at 4:30, the next one's at 5, and the next one's at 6. Because quite frankly, I wasn't sure what was going to be the best fit for this jurisdiction. So I wanted to see what our attendance looked like. And when we worked with Amy, we said, okay, like Michael said, okay, this is when the commissioners meet. So we were trying just to get a sense, because we are in the beginning of the process. So we wanted to work through it and see what fits best, because we're willing, if there is a better time, we're more than happy to do that time that works for the most number of people. But we thought if we staggered them a little bit, that could be helpful.
So I get, the other concern I have, if this is sustainability and growth workshop is specifically for economic development, I mean, why are they getting their own we purchased part of a package. Why are they getting this tailored workshop when they were supposed to be?
Just like we're meeting with the Ken Narrows Development Foundation. We're meeting with specific groups that exist to get their feedback, and we're going out to the public. The Ken Narrows Development Foundation meeting and the Sustainability and Growth Workshop is part of meeting with the EDC and the Kent Narrows folks.
But if they're going to
Based on the topics in which we're working on. So we're working on housing and economic development and tourism right now. So we're trying to work with the groups that are in the topic in which we're starting to go into. And so when we get to other sections of the plan, then that should change and be reflective of that section in which we're working in. So that is why it wasn't that some topic was being favored over another topic. It just happened to be where we were working in the time in which that quarter was happening.
Go ahead, Sheila.
Well,
I'm sorry.
actually, my questions were along the same lines, I think, that Mr. Reese has been asking with respect to public input. And I appreciate that you're going to have public forums later. But I'm a little concerned, too, about the stratification of special interest groups giving you to everything is linear. There doesn't seem to be any cross-participation. I mean, if you take sustainability and growth, because it's what you have on your screen, for example, it's one thing to meet with the economic development community, but there are a lot of other people who have interest in sustainability and growth that may actually be different from the economic development sector's perspectives on that. And I think you could probably say that about anything. Housing, I mean, they're advocates for kinds of housing, and then there are other people who oppose that kind of housing, and they're advocates for kinds of growth in areas and advocates for growth in different areas, and you're not getting, it doesn't look like the proposal gets that cross-fertilization. I mean, I know that a lot of people found the last planning exercise in which I took part tedious because there was a great deal of public participation built in, including groups that were specifically designed by elements or topic areas in the plan that were designed to have this cross-fertilization. It looks to me like you're going to get a lot of linear information from special interest groups that are already composed, and then you'll have an opportunity for the public to comment, but you won't have, in developing your proposals, that kind of richness of commentary that comes when people who are both interested in something, anything that's in the plan, say sustainability, but who have different interests, maybe one because some are business people and others who are concerned about their taxes, and one set's concerned about profits and others concerned about taxes and others concerned about the future orientation for the sustainability of the county's resources. And it doesn't look like the plan for developing ideas builds in any place where it would be likely that you would get those competing interests to talk to one another and try to work out some thoughts about how these things might be approached in the plan, which inevitably needs to be a compromise among the various interests, not just reflective of one interest over another or majority rules type of thing. So I was concerned about what appears to be a pretty scant degree of public participation other than these things with structured groups that are already out there. The other thing that occurred to me is, the concentration on towns. If you look at Queen Anne County's population spread, it really captures a very small part of Queen Anne's County because the towns are, 600 people here, and, just a few hundred people, whereas the population is spread mostly in unincorporated areas in the county. So I don't know the extent to which, and anyway, the municipalities have independent authority for planning, so their point of view about the county is, and the county's degree of ability to influence their planning is limited. So it seemed like an odd place to start was with the towns. Not that they need to be included, obviously, but to start with the town and county perspective, you're neither capturing most of the population nor most of the county's ability to influence planning with that approach. So those were some observations I had. With respect to the public's participation, until I retired for the last time a couple of years ago, I was commuting to Howard County, and I know most people in my neighborhood are still commuting, go to Washington or Baltimore. I mean, so you don't get home from those places until probably 6:30, unless you're working a flex schedule for the federal government or something. And I know the commissioners meet at 5:30. There are lots of people who complain about that because people don't, and lots of people who come in an hour or so, or an hour and a half after the commissioners start. And other suburban counties where I've lived or worked seem to start their meetings like at 7 p.m. or something closer to that. I know you're traveling a long distance yourselves as consultants. You're not? I thought you came from Western Maryland.
But we try to come way early, so we're
But
at your
you'll be going home way late if you start at 7.
No
But
worries.
if you really want to be available to the people who work here, and you've said most of the people who've answered your surveys are 55 to 65, so those people are working. And you might look at a later time because very few people who are commuting. And this has really become, I agree with Mr. Reese's description, it's more an outer suburb than it is, it is an agriculture as a primary industry, and that's important, but the rest of the county that isn't agriculture, your population is mostly an exurb, really, of Baltimore and Washington, and I think that has to be recognized in the planning process and also in the process for developing, finding out what people think all along the way, not just at the front end, but as things develop and as issues are being discussed.
So in hindsight, the Sustainability and Growth Workshop should have probably been listed as Economic Development Commission meeting. I think there's a misconception that that by saying Stability and Growth Workshop, we're having a special meeting in the morning that nobody can attend, and that's not the intent. The intent was to sit down with the Economic Development Commission, just like we're sitting down with the Kent Narrows Development Foundation, just like we will be sitting down with other groups in the county.
Go to Roman number 1 after workshop, so it doesn't look like it's the one and only.
Duly noted.
Well, even if you say it's the economic development work meeting, which is fine, I think the issue still lies there as when does the community as a whole talk about sustainability, economic growth, whatever the topic that you expect the economic development people to talk about.
So this update, this refresh is we're not creating a brand new comprehensive plan. And the last time, as you know, it took 3 years, and I think there were 12 subcommittees.
Produced this.
And we're not
Completely unwieldy.
Right.
It needs to be pared down. The
Used to
reason
be
it
about
is-
a tenth of that.
And
largely the
that's
reason
what
it-
our approach is, Mr.
That's
Priest.
fine,
That's what
but
we're
you don't
trying
pare
to
down
do.
by ignoring part of the county.
So,
Most of the
in
people.
order to do that, we collectively decided that this planning commission would be that working subcommittee. So we're not doing 12 subcommittees with their own ideas, all trying to work something out and taking 3 years and not getting anywhere. We chose that this planning commission is that work group, is that committee. And your meetings are publicly advertised well in advance. And when our consultant starts rolling out these chapters, if it's housing, if it's land use, if it's transportation, you'll get that information well in advance. And the public will have an opportunity, when that topic comes before you, to publicly speak. In our minds, that's the most efficient way to do a update. One subcommittee group, which is you folks, and listening to the public when we bring those elements up. That does not mean that we're not going out into the public, because we are. They will continue to have these work group meetings throughout the county, but ultimately, when their research is done and they make their recommendations, that will be vetted here, right here at this work group meeting. That's the game plan.
Can I weigh in on
Mike,
that, please? Because I think I've been through more of these than anybody in the room and probably anybody in the county, going back to the 80s. The model that's been used in the past has been chaotic, has produced, as Mike points out, an interminable process that results in, I don't know that it results in any consensus among the what have become warring factions. It has generated a sense of, I'll use the word entitlement among the warring factions, that if their point of view is not adopted, that somehow they've been disenfranchised. And I think that the more efficient approach that Mike has embarked upon is a better approach that does not discount the views of the warring factions, so to speak, but also focuses on getting the job done.
Mike, may I just ask a couple questions? I may be putting the cart before the horse, but have we, and I guess I'm going to direct this to you, Mike, since you have been, first of all, do we have a mission statement for this project? Just answer, you can just answer, just tell me yes or no.
As of right now, no, we haven't
Okay,
established
okay,
that yet.
all right.
We're doing research.
Okay. Second comment is the general guidelines for this. Tied in with this are what I would call major concerns. In other words, I would like to see us have a list of major concerns in the county, including encompassing the whole area.
Right.
Things such as low-cost housing, traffic,
Yes.
those things.
And
Do
we're
we
going to
have
get
those?
there.
Or are we going to get that
we are-
afterwards, or?
They're evaluating that now. They're getting the comments. Last week, we had
Well,
a meeting.
those should really come from, not from all their special interest groups that they're surveying, but these should come from the people that are involved in the county.
Right.
And
That was last week's meeting. It was down on Kent Island. It was at the library, and it was open to the public, not just the folks who live on Kent Island.
and I was
It was
there.
advertised
I
that you were
understand.
there. Anybody who wants to come. And what it was not a venue where the public had an opportunity to stand up and voice grievances, because that's not what the meeting's about. It's about collecting information and vision. They will have an opportunity in the future, once we identify the issues, to speak. We're not at all suggesting in the future someone is not going to have an opportunity to express their opinion. But we're in the data collecting process now. They need to identify what the issues are, and then we'll have that, what you just suggested, then we'll have our hit list of issues that we need to address. So we're in the data collecting, and if I'm wrong, please tell
well,
me.
maybe you need two sets up. Maybe you need one initially. That could be, I don't know.
I do not want to put anything out until we get an understanding of what the issues are. I don't want to project. I know we've heard workforce housing, affordable housing as an example, but we're in the data collecting part of that right now. We met an hour and a half yesterday with the housing folks to get an understanding of their program, what their needs, perceived needs are, and how best we can address those needs for our residents. That's what we're trying to find out. And once we understand that, then we can put forth a recommendation on how to get there. Is it changing the MPDU ordinance, as an example? So I'm frustrated because the comments that I receive, the phone calls and the emails is, why aren't you addressing our needs? And my repeated response has been, our consultants, this is February, they're in the data collection process. They're working their tails off to understand those issues. Once we understand the issues, then we can start addressing them. So
Welcome to Queen Anne's County Incompetent Update, Mike. Should have been here 10 years ago and 20 years ago. Good Lord, it was just a disaster if you let it metastasize such as it has in the past.
Well, we want to stay focused, and we want to understand the issues and deal with the issues, but we need to understand them first.
Well, my concern is that they're going to collect all this data, and then they're not looking at the big picture, the future, the next 20 years.
You answer that question.
Wait a minute, hold on just a minute. let me just, because I've been involved in strategic planning with corporations and looking at the future, and it's very difficult, even looking out 5 years. You know, that was a plan. It was a big deal, and it went in a desk drawer somewhere. But this is something that we have to work by. But my concern is that you're going to collect a lot of data that is going to lead you into an area that may not be part of really the major concerns that maybe the commissioners have, or we have, or your department, Mike. And that's the part that I worry about, because you don't have a list. You don't have a pre-list of your major concerns, and a mission statement, something that would be that you can maybe try to concentrate on the big issues. That's what this is all about, is the big issues, really. This is not nuts and bolts as much as it is the big picture. Where are we going? How are we going to develop?
Right.
How are we going to supply housing? Right. I mean, all of this stuff is elementary as hell, I think.
Well, I want Jenny to answer that question.
I'm sorry, I didn't
And
mean to
so
get up on
I
the
don't
floor.
know if you guys
But I
remember
get- huh?
that I said beginnings are always tough. I've never been in a process, particularly quarter one, where I don't hear, because it's a little bit of fear. It's a fear on people's part, on your part, on the public's, on staff, that we won't get to where we need to be through the process, or someone's going to be left out, or someone's not going to be heard. And so we're listening to these things and applying that information. So I'm listening, and I hear like this, this quarter one really trying to use this opportunity to hear and then adapt and formulate this schedule. That's why you see quarter one up on the website. You don't see quarter 2, 3, and 4, because if we have a plan going forward. But when we post and we show all that, we're locked in. And I'm trying to keep this, particularly in this beginning, so I can hear, we can talk with staff. If you, at the December meeting of the technical committee, we actually did more of a strategic session with them. Said, what opportunities did Queen Anne's miss out on the last decade? What problems or issues do you see? So some of what we did with the public, we actually did with those very folks that are named for implementation in that plan. And so we're doing that, maybe not in the same way. It shifts a little bit depending on the audience, but those are the things that we need to hear to direct us going forward. But to say that we're there yet, I can't say that, because I would then be circumventing the very process in which we're undertaking. Because otherwise, you could just charge us with doing it, and we could go off and do it and present it to you at the end, which is not what you want, because that wouldn't represent what's happening here. So we're listening, we're taking our direction from the Planning Commission, or the vetting group, and then we're going to bring to you what we're gathering, what we're getting. So I'm not at the point to do that with you yet, because we have these other workshops to do. But we will be loading you up with a lot of information, and I'll be giving you the highlights, and then we can delve into that and think on that more. And then we will have the flexibility to say, okay, we think that this would be a good idea because of X, and it's based on something other than, another thing we find is sometimes in part of the process, you can't be wrong if that's your perception. That is your perception. However, we could find some data and say, consider this, look at this. Like, for instance, farmland, let's take agriculture, that it's disappearing. And if that's a perception, well, what's actually happening in this decade? Did it increase? And what does that mean? And how do we keep that? How do we keep that trend? Is that a trend that we want to see? And how do we perpetuate that trend? So none of this surprises me. And we're at a good place. And I think that we, as a team, working with the public, can have a much better process and get you what you want. Just let's work together and get there.
So, thank you for that. Michael, thank you for your passion and energy. I appreciate it. Just as we get passionate too.
Yes, we do.
But I want to convey this. We are partners for the customer, and the customer is the constituent. The customer is the person living up in Churchill or down at the end of Roman Coke or Love Point or just outside of Queenstown because they're incorporated. But I say that jestfully. We're partners in this, and the more we can work together to help the customer, that's what we need to do, and we need to keep the customer in mind as we are partners. So with that, if there's any other comments from the commission?
I've got one other comment. I'm sorry, my soapbox just fell off.
Okay, that's all right, we'll pick you back up, Bob.
Is there any plans for these major concerns can come from a work session where you have a facilitator that can have 15 sheets around the board like you did, although you had that all pre-worked out. I'm talking about, and then you had people putting dots up there of where they think that there should be. I'm talking about taking a group like we have right here with the county commissioners and doing a little workshop, and then come around and you can vote on these daggone things. You can get 6 or 8 of the major items, major concerns that we should be looking at. And that's my point, is we're going to wind up with 150 of them, and because we've gone off on a tangent. And I'm just trying to bring the thing back into focus, because there's just really and truly, there are probably about 10 or 12 major concerns in the county that will cover all the areas that we're talking about. But I don't know that you're going to get that from your data collection, the way that you're approaching it. And look, I'm not an expert on this at all, but I've been involved in enough of these things that I know how they should work.
Thank you. Any other comments from the commission? So, Michael, Ms. Smith, Ms. King, thank you all very much for your presentation and updates. We look forward to receiving emails from staff on a regular basis, and Godspeed.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you. We look forward to meeting with you again with updates.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael, miscellaneous staff items? Thank you. Are there any public comments before we close? Hearing none, sorry.
You won't hear any anyway.
Jody.
Jody Schultz, Chester. I had some comments on that conversation I just heard.
3 minutes, sir.
So I don't envy anybody. I mean, the only word I think about is going through some of these. I was involved with the Chester, Stevensville, the Kent Narrows, many of the subcommittees. And I mean, it was a shit show. I don't know how else to say it. And so there's going to be no...
Sir, please watch your language.
Well, the plan's going to come out, and there's going to be some people not in agreement, some in agreement. So you try to get to that happy medium to please everybody. But having been to the meeting the other night at the library, I agree with Mr. Priest. It was so many comments. I don't know how many comments there were, and we had these dots, and the comment I made is make the dots bigger, because the dots were about big as the end of my pen, and we couldn't get the dots up. But some people, so I don't know how much validity is being put on that, because some people, me included, put all our dots on a couple things. So I would hate to think that the dots,
Did you vote multiple times the other night?
everybody did. And there was no rules to the dots, because we asked. So if I've got all my dots on 3 or 4 things that are important to him, or to me, then what does that do in the process? And I saw very few red dots, so it was a little bit confusing, and the questions that were asked amongst the dot people were, where do we put a red dot, and what does it mean? It was kind of counter to the question, whether you support it or not. Some of them didn't deserve a red or a green dot, I think, and so that was a little bit confusing. It's just an observation, and it wasn't just me, but again, I'd hate to see an overloading of green dots from the 55 people that were there to be a consensus of the area, in fairness to everybody.
Exactly.
What happened to the one person, one vote concept?
I don't think that was ever, I don't think they said that.
We did not. In fact, I encouraged people, because it was an update, and I wrestled with this a little bit. Because it's an update, I had what was in 2010 up, and they were identified as challenges and opportunities. And the question was, do you still identify this as a challenge or as an opportunity? Because you could have the same type of thing, depending on perspective, as an opportunity or a challenge, or in some cases, both. And so what we ended up doing was there were 2 opportunities. One was to put some information or what you thought about was 2010. And then there were the ballot boxes up that said, here, this is a card per idea, and are there opportunities, challenges, and then comments on the current vision statement that Queen Anne's County has from the 2010 plan. And we did get the dots, and we did look at that, and then we typed up, and we do want to be able to share this, what we ended up with the cards. And I will tell you what I found is a lot more information. And when people wrote on the cards the new stuff for 2020 going forward, they did more complete thoughts than what was up. A lot of what was in the previous plans were phrases or words, just, and depending, so there was no context. And when people did the cards, and we actually ended up getting a lot of information, and we saw a lot of repetitive themes in that information. So we saw that different people were saying different things, and the cards were more of the individual, and the dots were up to, our thought was you would do 1 dot per. However, I did notice, and I thought too, if they were so small, how did you put all of those up there? If you were
I went home, I had 3 stuck on my jacket when I got home.
So we have bigger dots. We did order bigger dots, but the thought on the cards, and we actually did collect a lot of information. But again, that's that subjective, qualitative, perspective information. And so that will drive some of the quantity. So was a lack of a dot,
in your opinion, something that wasn't worth addressing in the future?
So what it told me, if no one put anything up on that, it didn't resonate with them. It didn't stand out. It wasn't something that caught their attention. Because again, it was this. So the ones that you saw a lot, or a lot of people buy, those were the hot button items that they were going to right away. And then with the cards were all considered new 2020. Even though they might be reflective of some of the things, it told us they were still current. So again, it's a plan update, but we're looking going forward, what is still considered or what resonates with people 10 years later.
Before you leave, and I meant to mention this earlier, looking through Appendix 1, as I did while you were speaking, there are a number of recommendations in the land use section, which were driven by the what was then the law. The law has changed significantly, as you know, since 2010, particularly with the septic bill and others. So a number of those recommendations are contrary to law now. I hope they're not being put up on the hotspot thing, because there's no point in commenting on them because they can't happen. So I hope those are being culled out and not being part of the information gathering because they're irrelevant now.
So it was, if you look in the sections, there were
Those also happen to be the areas where there was the most chaos.
Okay, duly noted.
So to jump, is she in my 3 minutes? or-
No,
Oh, sorry. He wants to kick me out.
So, I mean, I don't mean to get in deep. I'm actually just here to help, as I always try to be. And I'm just making suggestions. I think it was too much, and you were there. It was just too much to try to dissect rather than hunker down into a few things. And so it leads me to my next comment about the sewer and the water. I guess those maps will be updated because we're almost out of sewer and water. So that's going to drive, why plan if we don't have the sewer and the water to support areas? So that's just a comment about that. I mean, some things with the traffic, everybody's dotting the traffic, some of that crap's out of our control, unfortunately. The bridge. I mean, I don't know what we do about that. That is totally out of our control. We can put as many back and side roads leading up to the bridge, but we still have to go over the bridge. So that's something that we should just all be aware of. And again, I'm just here to help. I offer the fire department as a venue for meetings, for the comp plan. If I shared that with Mike, if you guys want to have a meeting there, we're more than happy to open that, our hall up for whatever you need. I'll be happy to put on our firehouse sign any information about meetings or comp plan or whatever, any way we can help or I can help. I'll just offer you that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment pertaining to any subject? Hearing none. Anything good to the commission? No? I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you all.